All right, so some of you guys are having some problems with the law of cosine, so I thought I would make you a quick video here to show you how to solve law of cosines problems. So let's talk about what the law of cosines says. The law of cosines says that side A is equal to, side A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. Now, one thing to notice is that this letter, lowercase, will always match this letter, uppercase, right? So side for lowercase, uppercase is angle. And then these guys here, BC, those will always be the other two sides. So, for example, I could do this having B squared right here, and that means that over here I'd have cosine of big B, and in the middle I would use A and C. So A squared plus C squared minus 2AC times cosine B. And it's the same for C. If you put C squared first, it will be the other two sides, so B squared plus A squared minus 2 times those other two sides, cosine of C. So the law of cosines looks really crazy because it has 3 different versions, but they're really the same formula, just kind of rearranged with the letters changed. So now, how to solve a triangle when you don't know which operation you're going to have to use, the law of sines or the law of cosines. I said this in the law of sines video, but in case you didn't get to see that one, it's easiest, or it's best, to make a chart with A, B, and C in it, matched up right next to their counterpart. So like this. We have big A, big B, big C, little a, little b, little c. And if you have a whole row of information, right, big A and little a, or big B and little b, or big C and little c, you use the law of sines. So here we're going to fill in the numbers. A is 38 degrees. Side B is 67 and side C is 17. So it looks like we don't have an entire row of information. And we can't get one of the angles, because remember, the angles have to add up to 180, right? Like, I shouldn't put that line all the way over. It's just these guys. These 3 angles have to add up to 180. So in law of sines, once you have 2 of the angles, the third angle you just get with subtraction. And in the law of cosines, same thing. But the point is that in the law of cosines, you won't have that. There will be no option for you to have a whole row of information. So we know that we are going to have to use the law of cosines because we don't have the big version and little version of one of the letters. We have all different. So now we're gonna solve for everything, but where do you start? Well, I would start here with side A. So if side A is the side that I'm looking for, I go over here and I say, okay, it's best to use this first equation. So I'll say side A squared is going to equal B squared, so 67 squared, plus C squared, so 17 squared, minus 2 times 67 times 17 times the cosine of 38 degrees. And remember, always make sure your calculator's in the right mode here. You want to make sure you're in degree mode. And you're going to get a decimal. And you don't want to round that decimal until the last possible point. So you're going to have to put this in your calculator and never round it off. You always use the calculation which is on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in my calculator and see what I get. So what I get in my calculator is a squared equals 2,982.911,503 stuff. I'm keeping all of that stuff on the screen, and I'm going to take the square root to get A alone. So A is going to equal the square root of that, which is 54.61603 stuff. And it says carry your intermediate computations to at least 4 decimals, which we did. And then we're going to round our answers to the nearest tenth. So tenth is 1 digit. You look to the right. If that's a 0 to 4, you keep your digit. If it's 5 and up, you bump your digit. So here we're going to keep the 6. So A will be 54.6. Now, technically, you now have a whole row of information. So you could use the law of sines. The reason that I am not going to use the law of sines at this moment is because since I'm looking for angles, when I use the law of sines and then I have to use my sine inverse button, I could get a wrong angle in there. I could get something small and I was supposed to get the big version. So I'm going to use the law of cosines again. Like I'm just going to keep using law of cosines to find angle B and angle C. Because when you use your cosine inverse button, you don't have to check, right? You just use it straight, straight in front of you. So let's look for angle B. Angle B. So I'm going to use B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine of big B. So I want the only thing that I don't know to be big B. So let's plug all of these in. We have got 67 squared equals 54.6 squared plus 17 squared minus 2 times 54.6 times 17 times the cosine of B. And now I'm going to go ahead and get numbers for all of these and then start manipulating. So let's see, 67 squared. 67 squared is 4489 equals, and then 54.6 squared is 2981.16 plus 17 squared is 289 minus, and now I have to do 2 times 54.6 times 17. So 2 times 54.6 times 17. And that's 1856.4 times the cosine of B. Now, you can put these two together right here, but you cannot put them together with the 1856.4 because that has a cosine attached to it. So let me put these two numbers together just to make it look nicer. 2981.16 plus 289 equals. So I've got 4489 equals 3,270.16 minus 1856.4 times the cosine of b. Now, we got to get the cosine of b alone. So first we should subtract 3270.16 on both sides. You should get 1,218.84 equals negative 1856.4 times the cosine of b. So now to break off that negative 1856.4, we're going to divide. So we're going to divide it off here. So I'm going to do that division divided by So divided by 1856.4 makes a big long decimal. I'm going to write it out, but I'm not going to take it out of my calculator. I'm going to let it be a big long decimal. So I've got negative 0.6565610 stuff equals cosine of b. And now to get b, I have to use cosine inverse. So I'm going to do cosine inverse of this long decimal, 0.0656561 stuff. All the stuff is going to be in my calculator when I do it. Okay, so I need to do the cosine inverse. And again, I just hit second and my cosine inverse button comes up and I hit that and I get b equals 131.038.126. And there's a lot of stuff after that. We're going to round to the nearest tenth. So looking to the right, it's a 3, which means I keep the 0. So my B value, my angle B, is 131.0. Now to get angle C, you could go through this process again, but don't forget that your angles have to add up to 180. So I know that 38 plus 131 plus C has to equal 180. So 169 plus C equals 180. So C equals 11 degrees. So for the third angle, always use subtraction. For the second angle, you could have used the law of sines, but remember the law of sines will only give you, when you use your cosine inverse or your sine inverse button, it only gives you an answer between minus 180, or sorry, minus 90 and 90. And so, of course, it's not going to be a negative number, right? So when you use your sine inverse button, it's going to give you an acute angle, but sometimes there's a second angle that has the same sine value over in quadrant 2. So I know law of sines is a little faster than the law of cosines, but if you get the wrong value, if you don't check for that bigger angle to see what makes sense, then you'll get the whole problem wrong. So what would have happened in this problem if we had used the law of sines to get angle B? We would have got B equals, I don't know, like maybe 50 something, 49. And then when we got C, C would be a big number. And you can tell that that's not right because the biggest angle has to open to the biggest side. So here, 131 is the biggest angle and 67 is the biggest side. 11 is the smallest angle and 17 is the smallest side, so that you can tell they go together. Now let's try one that is a word problem. So I'm just going to move this word problem down a little bit. Sorry, it was like all up in our business when we were doing that one. Okay, so let's try this one. Dante's on vacation in a tropical bay that has 3 islands. Sounds nice. He rents a boat on island A and plans to navigate to island C, which is 13 miles away. Based on a figure below, at what angle should he navigate to go to island C? Okay, well, let's draw it. So first of all, if this is island A, then this side is baby A. And if this is island B, then this side is baby B. And if this is island C, then this side is baby C. Okay, so keep that in mind. You always set up your triangles where the angle opens to the side. So now I'm going to put these into my chart because I'm pretending that I don't know what operation I'm going to use, the law of sines or the law of cosines. So angle A, angle B, and angle C are all unknown. Boo. Side A is 15. Side B is 13, and side C is 11. And now all the question wants to know is angle A. This is what we want. So we can see right now that we don't have a whole row of information, right? We don't have big A and little a, big B and little b, or big C and little c. So we know it's going to have to be a law of cosines. Now, we want angle A, which means we have to start with side A squared. So A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. I could easily have asked about the angle for island B, and we would use the B version where we start with B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. So it's depending on what it's asking for, what you're searching for, which one of those law cosines you use. But remember, this letter will always match this letter, big, little, and then these letters will be the other ones every time. So let's try this. I've got 15 squared equals 13 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 13 times 11 times cosine of A. So now let's make these numbers a little prettier. I've got 225 equals 169 plus 121 minus 280 something. I got to use my calculator for that. 13 times 11 times 2. 13 times 11 times 2. 286. Oh, I was close. Minus 286 cosine A. Now remember that 286 is attached to cosine A, so you can't put it together with the 169 and the 121. But you can put just 169 and 121 together. So let's do that. 225 equals, let's see, 169 plus 121 is 290 minus 286 cos A. So now our goal is to get cosine A alone. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 290 on both sides. So I get negative 65 equals negative 286 cosine A. And then we're going to break off negative 286. So it's attached to cosine A. We're going to break it off with division. So divide by negative 286. So on the right side, we have cos A. And on the left side, I've got positive 0.22727727 repeating forever. So now to get A alone, we're going to use our cosine inverse button. So we're going to take the cosine inverse of 0.22727727 dot dot dot, and that will equal the size of angle A. So again, I'm going to hit cosine inverse, and I get 76.863441 stuff. And it says round your answer to the nearest tenth. So it should be 76 point either 8 or 0.9. I look to the right. 6 tells me to bump up the 8. So I'll say A equals 76.9 degrees. Now I encourage you to try this again with angle B and angle C, even though it's not what they asked, just for some practice.